Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 535. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. And my guest today is Lex Fajardo, an Eisner Award-winning cartoonist, editor, and creator of the long-running middle-grade graphic novel series Kid Beowulf. Lex has built a whole world around a great idea. What if Beowulf and Grendel were not just enemies from an old epic poem, but twin brothers traveling through a world of myths, monsters, heroes, and ancient stories? The series takes inspiration from the epic literature and world mythology, but has the energy of a classic adventure comic. Fast-moving, funny, full of danger, and built for young readers who like big quests. Now Lex is back with a new Kickstarter, Kid Beowulf Odyssey Annual, a 44-page full-colored comic collecting 3 new stories from the next big Beowulf adventure. This time, Beowulf and Grendel are heading into the land of myth and monsters, and the campaign gives readers a fresh entry point into the large Kid Bee universe. So today we're talking about myth, monsters, Kickstarter, world building, making epic stories kid-friendly without shrinking them, and why Beowulf and Grendel still have plenty of road ahead of them. Lex, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Barty. Episode 535. This sounds momentous. I'm
This
very
is,
excited to be
see.
here on Storycomic. Thank you for having me.
What is the Kid Beowulf Odyssey Annual, and how does that kind of fit into the larger Kid Beowulf universe?
That's a great question. So, for folks who are not familiar with Kid Beowulf, you did a great encapsulation of what that story is. It's a ongoing graphic novel series I've been working on for 20 plus years, and the superstructure of the storyline is basically Beowulf and Grendel as 12-year-old twin brothers traveling across Europe and Asia, meeting other epic heroes, getting into other adventures. And there are 5 books in the series. The first 4 basically center on a different country. So Scandinavia is the first book. Uh, Medieval France is the second book. Spain is the third. A Sword and Sandal Rome is the 4th book. And each episode that the brothers encounter is sort of another epoch in myth and mythology. So following the map, the journey of the brothers and the books they're in. And so after book 4, when Beowulf and Grendel were in ancient Italy, the next place that they would go into the map would be ancient Greece, which is a place that I have longed to get Beowulf and Grendel to, because I'm a longtime fan of Greek and Roman mythology. And it just so happened that this also happened to be the summer of the Odyssey, which is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So I've been working on my version of the Odyssey for the last couple of years, and thought, like, well, I should put it out there for some readers to get a taste of. So this Kid Beowulf Odyssey, I've structured it. There are 3 unique stories in this comic book. It's sort of like the summer annuals of old. I don't know if you grew up reading Marvel and DC annuals, but
Right.
they were like great ways to just dive into a new character or a new series. And that's kind of how I'm positioning this. It is not the full graphic novel. That'll come out down the line when I'm actually done with it. But I wanted to sort of capitalize on this idea of the Odyssey summer and the fact that I'm working on this book, and I can just sort of invite new readers into this larger mythos, and maybe get them hooked on Kid Beowulf universe, and for longtime readers, they'll get to dip a toe into the new adventures of Beowulf and Grendel that pick up right after book 4, which came out in 2022, I believe. So this one is right on the heels of that. I've been releasing it online on my Patreon and Webtoon, and readers have been enjoying it digitally. But now this is their chance to actually get a physical copy of the first 3 chapters in the story. and hopefully it'll get them excited to read the rest of the Odyssey that I've been working on.
And so looking at the map, so our listeners out there, you can go to kidbeowulf.com and as Lex said, go to the about page and you see the map, but you also have it look like a board game thing where
Yeah.
is this also we're seeing what's future issues are going to be about?
Yeah, so the little yellow dotted line is basically all the places that Beowulf and Grendel will go that I would like to explore, um, and the different mythologies they're in. So currently they're smack dab in the middle in the Mediterranean, and I am playing with all the different myths, mythology from ancient Greece, specifically the Odyssey, but I'll also be tapping into the Legend of the Labyrinth. And then after their journey in ancient Greece, they'll hop on over into Mesopotamia, which is the land of Gilgamesh. So if your listeners are familiar with that ancient epic, Beowulf and Grendel will get into the kingdom of Uruk, Uruk, where Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu would go on these adventures. So they'll rub rub shoulders with those guys, into
Hmm.
India and um, Japan, China, the Kievan Rus. I have like rough ideas of those epics that they'll play around with and the heroes they're in. I've jotted them down over the years of like, oh, it'd be really fun if I could play around with the journey to the West and how would my characters
Right.
bump up against that storyline. They're just at this point they're just sort of rough ideas. I haven't really scripted out anything, but they're anytime I come across a new epic, I sort of think about, well, how would that play against Beowulf and Grendel, and how would that work into the storyline that I've been building for the last 20 odd years. So it's the map is there as more for me as like, hey, these are some of the ideas that you want to play with.
Right.
I'm not setting it in stone because you know how life is and where stories can go, but it is nice to have like a little bit of a roadmap that I can look to and explore and think about and see what new characters, what different epic poems there might be that Beowulf and Grendel could jump into, and for me as somebody who loves that kind of storytelling can explore.
Now, so how long has it taken you then? You said 20 years to do 5
Yeah.
books?
Well, yeah, because it's been Kid Beowulf just started as a zine way back and as really
Okay.
just a rough black and white 6-page idea back in like 2003, and I did a graphic novel then. It was really rough, but I self-published it. I kind of learned the ropes, like what does it take to do a long form story, and I did that long before Kickstarter ever existed. I just sort of found the money and produced a 200-page book, and it was really a first draft. Like that first Kid Beowulf story, I think you could probably find it on eBay somewhere, but I wouldn't encourage folks to do that, only because it's just it's a rough first pass on an idea. But I made a lot of good inroads in terms of like what it takes to create a story, to write and draw a 200-page graphic novel. And the early 2000s was just me taking it to shows and seeing if it was viable and seeing if people would pick it up, and there were plenty of folks who were interested in that story, one of which happened to be a publisher for a small press out in Portland, and he thought, well, I think there's some really good stuff here. What if we retooled it a little bit? So I did basically just redid that entire book, which became the Bloodbound Oath, which is the very first book in the series, which its first iteration was published in 2008 as a black and white book with this company called Bowler Hat Comics, and I then went on to do book two in black and white, The Song of Roland, um, and I also did book three, and that one was a Kickstarter, um, and that was The Rise of El Cid. So I had the first trilogy done by 2013, but by that point I had that small publisher had sort of gone by the wayside, and I was back to self-publishing. I was back to kickstarting, and back to doing library shows and comic cons, and selling my books, by hand to the people who would read them, and meeting other editors and publishers along the way. One of whom, I think it was like in 2015, found my book at an ALA, American Library Association, and she was really interested, and she was starting a new imprint for Andrews McMeel, and she asked, like, well, have you ever thought about doing this in color? And
Mm.
of course I would love to do color, but I didn't have the means or the talent really to explore that option. But she sort of nudged me in that direction, and I looked for a colorist, and so she wanted to republish the series in full color for Andrews McMeel, and that's what we did in 2016. Going back to the very first one, The Bloodbound Oath, I had it colored, found a great colorist, his name is Jose, who I've been working with ever since, and we basically just did books 1, 2, and 3 in color, relaunched them, packaged them for the graphic novel boom of the thousands that were. I should say actually now, but right now it's like 2016. So that 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 resurgence of middle grade graphic novels, is I was sort of part of
Right.
that train, and so that's kind of the idiom I've been working on ever since. So when I say I've been working on it for 20 plus years, it sounds like, wow, 20 years, but you only have 5 books. Like, what's going on? It's like, well, each book is 200 plus pages, and I've sort of been doing them in these different iterations. On top of which, I have to juggle the day job, which is always challenging. So it's, you're never able to do as much as you would like to do, but I'm very proud of the series that I've done so far.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So, looking at the roadmap, though, do you have a finite amount of books that you want to come out? Is it like 10 or is it 15? Do you have a...
Yeah, originally I think it was around 10 to 12 is kind of what
Okay.
what I was like, 4 different trilogies. But it's always, you know, um, nothing is, like I said before, nothing is really set in stone. And the longer that I do this series, the more I realize that it's just better to pivot and to move
Mm.
with, the stories that I'm really inspired to do, as opposed to like saying like, well, I said I was going to do this back in 2008, so I better do it. Well, that's silly. I mean, I can
Right.
only, do the stories that I'm compelled to do. So right now I'm very much steeped into the myths and legends of ancient Greece, and that's where my head is, and that's where um it's been, what I've been exploring for the last year or so. And I'm excited to sort of package it this way and see where the story goes from here.
And so, where does it take place from? Like a looking at the stories that you're telling in this, is this most of them? Are these going to be like BC era, like meetups, right?
Well, every excuse me, every new book, every new country that Beowulf and Grendel arrive in, they're really arriving in that country's epic age. There are no time
Okay.
portals. There are
Okay.
no there are no
Right.
like special gems that will transport them from one place to another. They just cross into another border of another country, and they bump up against these heroes that happen to be there. I don't like to overthink it about like because it is
Like it's the
it is
same. Yeah.
anachronistic for sure.
I guess so. I guess my leading question for that is, it takes you basically every 2 years you're able to put out a book, and that seems to be the pace you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. It's
Yeah.
it's yeah, book 4 I did during it was like the pandemic book. I did that during
Right.
the 20, and I published it. I mean, it takes much longer to write and draw and ink and letter and color and then self-publish a book,
Right.
because there's like the whole creative energy it takes to create a thing, and then you have the energy to actually put it out in the world, which is a whole other beast unto itself. So yeah, they take as long as they take, you know.
Right.
And this particular book, Odyssey, I'm doing it slightly differently than the other books, which are full on page 1 to 200, one full story.
Mm.
Maybe there's some chapters in there, but really it's one big chunk. Whereas this book, I've decided to do it episodically, so sort of mini stories. So one story, Grendel encounters the sirens, and that's a 10-page story. Another story, he bumps up against Scylla and Charybdis, so that's another 10-page story. Beowulf will bump up against giants. That's another 10 to 12-page story. So I'm doing it more specific, as episodic or chapter chunks, which aligns with the original Odyssey. That was 24 books, 24 episodes that Odysseus and the other characters encountered. And I like that because it gives me a little flexibility in terms of the style I can write in, or the chances I can take with a page layout. I don't have to feel the burden of like, okay, I'm on page 50 of the 200-page book, and I need to like keep these story threads moving.
Right.
Um, and that was an intentional choice to try and keep the pace of the book, um, just a little bit more manageable, truthfully,
Mm.
and to keep that momentum going. And I got that POV from reading some manga. I was reading One Piece and Vinland Saga and some others, and saw that like, okay, they're doing like 16-page chapters at a time, but at the same time, these are massive, protracted stories, and and but the energy is still there. You never kind of feel like you're bogged down or going through a slog. So that's kind of the approach I'm trying with this new book. So far, it's been working pretty well. And I'm able to keep up the enthusiasm for me as a creator by, delving into these different episodes and playing around with, the characters um, and teasing out the themes that are always present in all the books that I do.
Right. Now, so you're both the writer and the artist, Lex. So when you're building a scene, do you
Mhm.
usually think about the images first or like the story beats first then?
I'm a writer first. For
Mm.
instance, this is actually how I write my scripts. I don't know if you can see that.
Okay.
Um, I'll just write them in Word, and I kind of write them as a traditional um, pseudo screenplay script where I'm describing the action on the page, the action within the panel, what the characters are saying, and then I'll do what's called a really rough thumbnail that breaks down the pages by panel. I
Right.
don't do character art within. I like to just keep that for the actual page that I'm working on, which is in this case, like here's a piece of art here. This is an 11 by 14 crystal board that I draw the pages on. I pencil and ink on the board. I save. You can sort of see there's some outlines here for where the text will be. But once the art is done, I scan it in the computer. It becomes a digital document, and I do the lettering in Photoshop while I pass those pages onto my colorist to color. So we're sort of working in tandem. Um,
Okay.
but I try to do as much on the page as possible. But for me, it always starts with a script. Well, it starts with just the ideas and notes in my notebook, and then I transfer that to an actual script. Try and get those beats out,
Right.
and then I'll gradually move to the page.
So how important is it for you that you're telling these stories is also a school lessons in a way for kids who are reading this?
Sure, yeah, there's definitely that component. When I think about my stuff, I like to put it in the same category as like Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo or Jeff Smith's Bone or the great French comic Asterix. Uh, Certainly, those are qualities I aspire to, but more specifically, it's sort of like it's that type of cartooning and that type of all ages accessible
Right.
storytelling. And so yeah, there was always a component to introduce these characters to younger readers who may not be familiar with them. That's definitely one of the reasons I like to do these stories, because to a certain degree, characters like Beowulf or Odysseus or Gilgamesh or whomever are kind of like our first superheroes. So, and these stories are just really fun at the base level. Beowulf is a monster slaying story. Odysseus and the Odyssey is a story about encountering all kinds of different perils on a way to get home, and how does he survive those things. So
R-
there's lots of great stuff in there to share and to reinterpret as well.
Right. And so as we say, this is we're talking a little bit about this being your Kid Beowulf Odyssey Annual. So Lex, annual means yearly. So
Yeah,
are you doing an annual every year then?
I would sure like to. Like, I think that's reasonable to
Yeah.
do, at least in this iteration.
Yeah.
Like I said, this one collects three stories. If we hit our stretch goal, so right now we're sort of in the second week of the campaign. It did really well on its first week. We
You've
passed
already
through the
made your goal.
initial,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
initial goal. So we're sort of in the stretch goal territory. If we get another $500, then I'm going to add another story to the book to make it even supersized. So that's that's something that I'm working toward, and would be fun to add in. But as I said, the original Odyssey was 24 books. And that's kind of how many chapters I would like to do for my own. So next year I could have another 3 to 4 stories ready to go, and the year after that, and then eventually maybe collect it all as a graphic novel. Um,
Right.
that's sort of the trajectory I could sort of see mapping out. Or I just do it as issues and do it digitally. I really don't know. I don't like to, you know, put everything down in concrete. I'm just kind of like having fun with the stories I've got right now. I want to share them out with folks. I think they'll dig it. And at this point, it's just sort of creating a nice solid package that introduces them to this particular story and the larger Kid Beowulf universe. And so far so good.
Right. Excellent. And so Lex, if people want to learn more about Kid Beowulf, they can go to kidbeowulf.com, correct?
Yeah, they can go to kidbeowulf.com. Actually, on the comics tab of that website, if they want to dive in to read some of the stories, I all of these are free to read. I have 2 chapters from uh, Kid Beowulf Odyssey that are available to read, and then also excerpts from the different graphic novels and short stories. And So there's plenty to explore in there, for folks who've never read my stuff before. Um, for the tried and true, for the folks who have been reading Kid B since the beginning, I release um, these at least the chapters for Kid Beowulf Odyssey. I've been releasing on my Patreon, which gets released here on Wednesdays.
Mm,
And I also sort of mirror that on Webtoon for the vertical scrollers in the world.
right.
So yeah, there's great stories to jump in on. I recommend Shield and the Dragon is a really fun story,
Mhm.
which is a good starter for folks, as well as looking for lingonberries. Um, so yeah, a lot of good stuff on the website. I recommend you start
Right.
there. If you want to dive in deeper, follow me on Patreon. And then if you really like what you see, then join the Kickstarter, which is at links obviously on my website, but a direct link is kidbcomickickstarter.com, which will take you right to the page, and people can sign up and join the adventure, as I like to say.
Excellent. So Lex, I love when you come back. You got to come back on again. This is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it would be super fun. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk shop, to share my stuff with folks. and thank you for for having me on the 535th episode of Story Comic. I mean, this is an anniversary episode, isn't it?
I know it's 535 is a lucky number. See, yeah,
It's got to be. Yeah.
yeah,
If only we get 535 backers to my Kickstarter, maybe you have
right.
535 listeners who will now go, and then it could be a beautiful synchronicity of
Just
your show and my Kickstarter, and
I know.
we could just explode, man.